So it's almost like we've been conditioned so well through such a long process that now it is us who are enslaving ourselves mentally.
Because the job has already been...
The job has been done. It would be so easy, in one sense, for us to undo it. That's what I'm saying in this book. Because the way the system of European control works is that you have to accept a concept of reality which makes them superior. If you deny that, their thing will not work, and they will lose their control. So that they put all of this energy into establishing the system that begins when you're 3, 4, and so forth, which defines reality in such a way where there's no spirit, because they aren't a spiritual people, you see, which talks about this objective truth and so forth, which says that African spirituality represents backwardness, so you need to move away from it. It does all of these things which make you as an African person, me as an African person, us distrust the very part of ourselves, which is our strength.
I'm going to get back to this question, and that is this whole question of, do we know what we have lost? Do we realize that we have not always been Democrats, have not always been Baptists, have not always been Black Greeks, have not always been Links, have not always... how do we conceive of ourselves in a different time?
I think that there is a lot that is being done within the movement of African-centered education in that regard. In terms of, I think we have more information now that we've ever had before. And I have seen the effect of that information. That is very important, that people do begin to realize and understand, first of all, how young Europe is in relationship to Africa, and what we were putting into place, creating, building, conceiving of long before Europe existed. When you open people's minds to that, it can have a lot of power. So that I think that generally we have not understood that, but we have an opportunity to do so because of the work of many people now that is building on work that was done before that we didn't know about.
Other cultures have exhibited aggression, imperialistic tendencies. What accounts for Europe's success?
I'm glad you got to that question. Because what it allows me to do, I think, is to get at what I think is the specialness of the approach, the method that I used in this study. So it's going to take me a little while, if that's okay. I said to myself that, and this definitely was with the help of the ancestors, I want to, affirm that, by the way, that it was not...
Why is that important?
That's important because of our concept of connectedness, our concept of the universe, that it's not just words to talk of a spiritual universe and our spirituality as a people, but we've got to understand where our energy comes from. And I know that that's where mine came from. So this is ours. This belongs to us. I had to say, how would I approach studying the European given African conceptions? You see, it's one thing to say, okay, I want to do this, but then use their conceptions. What does it mean for us to really think in African terms? And so what I did was to develop concepts that came from an African worldview, not a European worldview. And I came up with the concept of asili. I also used an African language. That a Kiswahili word that means seed, origin, the essence of something. The reason that was important was because what people would say is, and they will say, oh, Europe is so vast. It is, there are so many different kinds of European forms and different countries. How can you talk about Europe as a whole? Now, of course, they've been talking about Europe as a whole all of this time, but when we begin to look at them, suddenly it's going to be, no, you can't really do this because it's too diverse. I needed a concept which could explain a culture in terms of its core, in terms of its ideological core, so that you could look at every different aspect of the culture and see how it fits into this one seed or core. And that's why I used the asili. And the idea of the seed was that once that asili is in place, that cultural asili, that it will seek to fulfill itself. So the way in which the culture will develop will all be feeding into that asili. And that would help me to get at consistency in terms of European development. What throws us as a people is that we make exceptions. You know, we say, oh, well, that's different over here, and that's different. This is a good one over here, and this doesn't really work that way. But in my analysis, it's all consistent, and it's all working for one purpose. And the concept of asili helps me to see that. And that comes to the answer to your question, is that what I was able to do was to see that the nature of the European asili was to seek power. That it, in essence, is, we could almost say it is an asili which lacks wholeness, and therefore must always see. Go back to Yurugu now. Remember Yurugu as the incomplete being that is always must be seeking, but can never be fulfilled because he can't get the complementary part of himself. Their asili, the European cultural asili, is incomplete, must always be seeking. Now, it cannot be fulfilled through spirit because they have no knowledge of spirit, no relationship to spiritual reality. Therefore, fulfillment is sought through power, and power here means power over others. And what that means is that everything within the culture, all of the development of European culture, all of the forms, all of the institutions, the ideas even, are all for the purpose of achieving European power. Now, your question was, if we can recognize that there have been imperialistic behaviors in other cultures, then what is the difference between European culture and these other cultures? And the answer is that Europeans have been most successful at achieving world domination because everything within the culture supports the quest for domination.
Everything.
Everything. Including, and most importantly to me, their philosophical concepts, including their concept of truth, including their academies, academia, the intellectuals, including that. It works for, including Christianity as it manifests itself, within the European development. All of that works for the achievement of European power.